We have some pretty significant news. The first big shooter drop in the buyout window has happened. The Minnesota Wild are buying up Parise and Suter. We'll discuss how this works and how it impacts them for the expansion draft and beyond coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some pretty significant breaking news from the NHL today. The buyout window's been open now for a while, and we really haven't heard much, largely due to the expansion draft. Of course, we're getting pretty close now for teams having to submit their list of protected players, and of course, if anybody has a no-move clause, teams only have so much more time left to talk to them about waiving it to be made available here in expansion as well. So, the first big news that comes out of Minnesota, where Michael Russo, who writes for the Wild for The Athletic, has indicated that Zach Parise and Ryan Suter both will be bought out of their contracts. Now, of course, those two guys signed identical mega long-term deals a long time ago, still have 4 years left in those contracts, both carrying a cap hit of just shy of $7.9 million. Now, both guys have been there a long time. They've had their ups and downs. Ryan Suter's certainly been the more consistent player of the two. Parise's had a ton of injuries over the years. It certainly impacted his play, although when he's healthy, he's still shown he can have his moments where he can be productive as well. But it was pretty clear heading into the end of last season and into the playoffs that he wasn't really a part of the Wild's plans anymore. He wasn't really getting any kind of top 6 minutes. He was a healthy scratch a fair bit. Like he wasn't in the mix anymore. It was kind of on the outside looking in. Now, Suter still played a regular role for them. He wasn't really in that kind of same boat, but obviously, they're both 36, and with the expansion draft coming up, they were in position to lose something pretty substantial, and they still could, but this will help a lot. Now, we're going to go over how this is going to impact their cap situation and how this is going to impact the expansion draft, first and foremost. Now, a guy we've talked about a lot that was likely going to be a trade candidate was Matt Dumba. They don't need to do that now. Now, they still could. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean 100% he won't be traded, but it certainly decreases the odds substantially now because they had Suter, Spurgeon, and Brodin all with a no move that they were forced to protect. They had no choice in the matter to expose Dumba or trade him so they didn't lose him unless one of these guys was not there anymore. And obviously Suter will be bought out, so that changes the whole dynamic on the blue line. So for expansion purposes, that's going to be a big help in that regard. Now, of course, goaltending, though, they're still going to have to expose likely Cam Talbot, or they're going to have to lose the young netminder and Kakinen, who they probably view as the goalie of the future here, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Cam Talbot played really well for them last year. That could be a big loss if he's the guy taken. Obviously, in the forward group, not having Parise there opens up another spot. It's not going to be as substantial, but if you look through their list here, obviously some of the top players are going to be protected. But, for example, they might have had to expose a guy like a Ryan Hartman as a possibility who might have been out there, which I know would be somebody they'd prefer not to lose over a guy like Parise. So that opens things up that way as well. So it's a big, big help when it comes to expansion draft. But the problem here lies in that they're just basically kicking the can down the road when it comes to their cap situation. For the upcoming season, they will save a ton of money. Now, I'll show you on the screen from capfriendly.com how the buyout will work here. It's obviously going to be extended to be part of their cap now for the next 8 years, because how it'll work is there'll be a 2/3 buyout over twice the period of time. So let's look at the year-by-year breakdown. We only have to do this once because the contracts are identical, not only what they're getting paid, but how they're structured here as well. So on next year, for the upcoming season, they're going to save $5.166 million per contract. That's over $10 million. Now, can you think of anybody else making $10 million that they've been linked to? Okay, I'll let you think on that one for a little bit here. Now, the problem here lies, though, is next year they're going to be helped a lot. Years 2, 3, and 4, though, not so much. In year 2, they're only going to save $1.166 million. And then in years 3 and 4, it gets even worse, where they only save $166,000. And this, of course, is per contract. So combined, these two guys make about $15 million a year. And in year 2 here, they're only saving 1.1 of each contract. So they're going to have around $13 million on the books of dead space in year 2. In years 3 and 4, it's just going to be a little shy of $15 million. We're not expected to see any salary cap increases for at least 3 to 4 years. I mean, the Wild could be in an awful mess down the road with all that dead space. I mean, they're going to have to rely heavily on entry-level contracts to get them through that period of time. Hard to say how they handle this. I don't know. That's why I'm not completely convinced a guy like Dumba stays as well, because as much as they would probably like to keep him and this will help them, maybe he stays for another year. It just is this kind of, like I said, it kicks the can down the road. It prevents them from having to make some of those hard decisions now, but they're still going to have to make them down the road when all this dead space kicks in and really impacts their cap. I mean, clearly, it's just, two guys here that were brought in to be like the future of to bring a Stanley Cup to the state of hockey. Just never quite worked out. They had a lot of really good teams. They were just never a really great team where they were really considered a real solid cup contender. So this is kind of an unfortunate ending to that story that was written in Minnesota when these two guys both left their existing franchises. Suter going from Nashville, Parise from New Jersey, to go to Minnesota together as much younger, unrestricted free agents, signing these massive contracts. It was something that a lot of people were surprised by. It was a big story at the time, and they're going to be the building blocks for the Wild to really take things up a notch. And they did take things up a notch, but just not close enough. It's an unfortunate ending that neither got to live out those dreams of bringing the Stanley Cup to Minnesota. Now, when it comes to these players' futures, I have no doubt they'll continue to play in the NHL. They're going to have obviously a lot more flexibility, but given the fact that they both had a no-move clause, that was the biggest factor here. They couldn't work out a trade without their consent, and that was almost impossible to do. So, in the case of Parise Suter, I think he's going to have a lot of interest. The guy can still play. I mean, he's playing at a much higher level than Parise is. So, to me, there's a lot of teams out there looking for left-shot defensemen that could be a good help on a much cheaper contract. Maybe he signs for 1 or 2 years at a much lower cap hit because he's still going to be getting paid a good chunk of money from Minnesota. So he'll likely sign for a lot less. A team like Boston jumps to mind, who certainly needs a left shot D. That to me would make a lot of sense right off the bat. And I know there's probably others as well. Hard to say where exactly he wants to play, but there won't be any shortage of interest. Now, when it comes to Zach Parise, I can honestly see him going to the Islanders. They were really close about a year ago, around the deadline, to making a deal happen to send him there. It was going to involve Minnesota taking back Andrew Ladd. So that's another unfavorable contract on the Islanders side. And there's other pieces, and it got really complicated with salaries and everything, and it ended up not happening. They were close, but not quite all the way to the finish line. And then they had to abort the deal because they ran out of time. We wondered if they might re-explore that. We know Lou Lamoriello has obviously history with Parise from the days in New Jersey. And now that he's going to be a free agent, I can see Lou signing him as a depth forward for a 1-year veteran contract or something to that effect. The Islanders can't afford much, but if he wants to play and likely get a regular role, I can see Lou giving him that opportunity and see where things go. But certainly going to be a very interesting time. Things are going to look very different in Minnesota, but we'll have to see here once this becomes official how the exact expansion plan works out. And the big thing for me is, to me, this tells me that they're probably pretty confident in an Eichel trade. But you got to remember as well, besides an Eichel trade, they also have to back up the Brinks truck here to Kaprizov, who was looking for mega money. And they have Kevin Fiala unsigned as well, rumored to be looking for around 7 or so. If they pull off an Eichel trade, a guy like Fiala is probably going to have to go, to be honest. That's my take on that. There are going to be other pieces in there too, obviously, but I think Fiala would be one of the starting pieces for them to get a good forward who can play now. So to me, we'll see what happens here, but I think the Minnesota Wild just suddenly get a lot more interesting, and we'll see how things go from here. But we'll see what other teams perform buyouts here. There could be some other big names looking at the same fate, but some teams will wait until after expansion because it won't impact their decisions for protecting players. But clearly a team like Minnesota, it would have and was going to, so it had to be necessary to get the ball rolling on this now. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the crazy happenings here in the 2021 NHL offseason. The next few weeks are bound to be quite chaotic, but we'll keep you up to date, so stick around. Subscribe to Top Shelf Hockey. You won't regret it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.